And can we add to the policy? Like, why is it top secret? Why is it top secret? Like, I just need to know, what do I need to, like, I want to go into
crack the code. I do too. So I'm hoping we can just continue. That's the work, right? And then there's some questions we don't know to ask, which is again why we got to have the folks that are on the ground and even the CDFIs at the table and the banks at the table. Like, come on, tell us what we don't know so that we ask the right questions. Because then they'll say, well, it's government regulation. That's where I come in, right?
Exactly.
That is where we need to make a policy recommendation.
The playing field becomes leveled, or at least more equitable, when we know what they are, meaning the lender requirement. And then when we know what they are they actually fair?
Bingo. we could end the podcast.
Right. Drop the mic. Let's drop
that is the goal.
Between May 2020 and December 2021, I have secured $8,121,009.35 in legitimate funding for Black and minority-owned businesses. My name is Taliba Bells, and I'm the host of the Black Bankable Podcast. Effective immediately, I am coming for more for the community.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Black Bankable Podcast. And today I have Tene Dolphin. She is the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council, and we're ready to hop right into it. I promise you this episode 100% is going to have as many gems as all of our other episodes. So I hope that you're ready. You can even take out pen and paper, whatever you need to do. Save it, like it, share it. I want you to do all of it because we're ready to get started. All right, y'all. So this is a personal treat for me too, and an honor to have Tene with us, because you'll see exactly what angle and why this is so special and why I want you to share it. Tene, please share with us, what's the National Women's Business Council?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that introduction. You know, I am honored and happy and excited to be here. The work that you do is so incredibly important. And so, like you said, it's an honor for you. It's an honor for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. It is one of about 1,000 federal advisory councils that exist in the federal government. This one in particular is housed at the SBA, and it is purposed to advise the president, the SBA administrator, and Congress on issues that pertain to women business enterprise. It is led by a 15-member, all volunteer, all women based council, ranging from business owners to folks who head women's business organizations. And throughout the year, we hold public meetings, roundtables, various conversations, subcommittee meetings, you name it. We conduct a host of research and then work with other stakeholders to really understand the barrier, the issues, and then the solutions to support women business enterprise. And so at the end of the year, we culminate all of this work in an annual report. The council right now is divided into 3 subcommittees. It's access to capital and opportunity, which has been a subcommittee that will last until the end of time, right? Yes. We have another subcommittee, which is women in STEM. And then our third subcommittee is women in rural entrepreneurship, which really looks at the underserved ecosystem. So a lot of what we do, even in that subcommittee, can apply outside of rural areas. We recently released our 2022 report. I'm probably going to say that throughout this podcast, but the council and the team worked really, really hard to comb through so many issues and so many things to really then put forth a thoughtful set of policy recommendations that we hope move the needle. I will say that NWBC was established in 1988. So it's only about 34 years old. And it was established with HR 5050. And the reason why I like to talk about HR 5050 is it not only established the NWBC, the National Women's Business Council, but it also removed the requirement for women to have a male co-signer. Again, let's say this. In 1988, I
Yes.
don't know
Yes.
about how old everybody else was.
Right. I was here.
It seems like just yesterday that a woman business owner would have not been able to go to the bank to sign for her loan. She
Yes.
would have had to bring a man.
Yes.
And so in 1988, we removed that requirement. We established NWBC, and we also established the women's business centers, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But all of those things happened with HR 5050. And so right now, part of what we're thinking is, what is the next HR 5050? We held a conversation last year, and when someone spoke it, I held on to it because I really do think, while the council has done some remarkable work over the last 34 years, right? What's the next big thing? And so I really want to also invite you and your listeners to help us think about what the next HR 5050 is.
That's amazing. You know, Tene, we've known each other for years, and you have been in this space. When I see how your face lights up, and I can see the passion exude through the screen, because I know you personally. You've been in this space, the small business entrepreneurship space, serving the small business community for years. How has your passion and your commitment to the small business community led you to serve right now as the executive director of NWBC?
You know, God makes no mistakes. And so it's really interesting because, you know, you could not have told me this is where I would be years ago. But, you know, even in high school, I was exposed to and introduced to the world of entrepreneurship, right? And really sort of developed not just an understanding, but like, I just marvel at entrepreneurs. I mean, it takes bravery at the very least. But then I think I also honed a spirit of service, right? In college, part of my sorority, you know, led our community service programs. And so I think when you put the two together, right, you begin to become service or public service oriented. And so, you know, I was a teacher for a number of years, and then I worked for an 8A firm. Most people don't know that I worked for an 8A firm, and I was the operations manager. And I think if you've ever had an operations manager, you know, that person knows everything. So I did the books, I did the payroll, I did some of the contracting, I did the billing, I found the office space, I put our HR policies in place. And so all of those things that really helped to make a small business move. And we were a government contractor, which again, really connects to the work that I'm doing right now. That experience, I didn't know it then, but is really, you know, educating me and spurring me along right now. I was fortunate enough to then work in local government and then federal government, 8 years over at the Department of Commerce, 6 of those years at the EDA, at the Economic Development Administration. And then when I came back to local government, both in DC and in Birmingham, I found my zone, right? Like I've been doing a lot of work with the community and with government and understanding policy and working alongside policymakers. But when I reconnected my spirit and love for and admiration for entrepreneurs, understanding who they are creators. They are super brave, and what they provide the community is probably undervalued and not recognized and lifted up enough, right? And so whatever I can do, right, to fuel that community, I'm honored to do. I had a short stint back outside of government, and all I kept talking about was policy. You know, every time somebody would say something, I was like, so what kind of policy change could that be? And they were looking at me like I was crazy because they were like, but we don't do policy. And so when this opportunity came along, I have to say it's probably my dream job, right? When I get to then support small businesses, women-owned businesses with policy recommendations. I didn't think I was a policy person, but when you understand the value of what policy does, right? So most people, you know, they only know government when it doesn't work, like, right?
Yes,
when it's working, right? That means there's a policy, there's a program that was introduced at some point, right? That created that. And so how do we improve policy or introduce policy that hasn't been introduced that's going to improve government services, delivery programs, and in our case, support women-owned businesses? So it's my dream job, and I'm excited.
And you do it so well. And I know that listeners and viewers can see, you know, hey, this is a person who gets it, right? She gets not only being a small business owner, have worked with small business owners, but where I've personally observed, particularly here in Birmingham with the Small Business Council that I was on at the time, is the policy strength. And I want to pin that
Yeah.
because that I immediately keywords came in my mind was civic duty, right? It's something that constantly comes up for our audience and for small business owners is the civic duty. Just like you said, we know when things aren't right. Right. We all know when things hit the news and government gets it wrong. But this is why exactly it's so priceless for you to be on the show today, because we're immediately challenging our listeners to take advantage of the opportunity to connect with a policymaker. Because it is a civic duty. On top of us running our businesses and all the things that we do on a day in, day out basis, if we don't connect and activate that civic duty, that advocacy, that we're on the front lines. We know those things that would be extremely helpful to NWBC for us to share and connect, so that when policy is being made and shared with the Biden administration and Congress and the SBA administrator, it is of value. And that is why Tene Dolphin is on this show today, because not only does she get it, not only does she thrive in creating policy and years of experience in creating policy, but she's so transparent in team building and bringing in everyone, because she gets the importance of that policy. So I'll go to our next thing that I want to talk about. In all of your experience, what would you say to women business owners who may be currently experiencing challenges, or barriers in their business? I know that NWBC addresses access to capital. So what would you say in that area NWBC is working on to those women business owners?
Thank you. Well, first, I also want to connect to something that you just said in your previous comment, which is bringing those voices to the table. One of the reasons why, again, this fuels me so much is that as policymakers, as folks who work in government, we could have the best intentions, but if we don't have our finger on the pulse and understand it from the people who are in it day to day, then even our good intentions can miss the mark, right? So that is why federal advisory councils were created. That is why even this one is so important. That's why the Small Business Council in Birmingham, all of those entities, when we bring the experts to the table, right, and connect them to the policymakers, then you could really get something that can be transformational.
Absolutely.
And in terms of your question, one of the things I would share, of course, and this one sounds hard because you hear it all the time, it's hold on and keep going.
Yes.
Again, I started the conversation talking about how brave entrepreneurs are, but we know that entrepreneurs, and in particular, women, and then women of color.
Yes.
You got to be made of steel, right?
That's right.
Push through doors that are always closed, push through responses that are no more often than not. And so one is to hold on. But then we held a roundtable last year. It was really important for us to really dig into some of these issues and really remove the blanket off and uncover everything.
Yeah.
Right? And we had a number of folks in that conversation. But a lot of what we heard is, one thing was this: make sure that you're going after the right capital. So often we get discouraged, but are we going after the right type of capital?
Okay.
We can't go after VC funding if our business is not a VC funded kind of business. And VC, we know, is scalable. It's usually tech. It's a few other things, but really understand the type of funding that is best for you, so that you're not getting no's because it's not a good fit.
It's not a good fit.
It's not a good fit.
So you shouldn't be in venture capital. Right. If that is not a fit for you. Absolutely.
Venture capital is most likely not supporting restaurants and salons and those things. Correct. And all of those businesses are amazing, but not fit for VC funding. Right. And then, what the other thing that became, it's always been apparent, but that of course we discussed is, there are a number of banks who don't lend. Right. And again, that's when you get that no. But we've talked to a number of business owners, and you got to keep going. You got to go to another bank. Right. I know that's your home bank. I know that's who you've been with for a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
And if they told you no, and if you got a relationship with them and they told you no,
right.
If you keep your personal stuff there, but you got to take your packet. And this is where I love Taliba, because you have to then refine your packet, make it stronger, and go to the next bank. And I have known a number of folks who might have been told no 2 or 3 times, but they finally found a bank that was going to support them. But the other thing that we need to have, make sure is that, they don't have the high interest rates or higher than normal, right? Or that they're not unfairly, sort of penalizing you for really being a Black woman, right?
That's right. Or not having your stuff together. Right. So, I mean, that's another thing under access to capital that we've seen is the predatory lending and sort of that unfair systematic structure that has popped up. And it's not all of a sudden, because it's always been around, but it feels like it's you're, as I always talk about, you're getting the robocalls. I probably get 3 or 4 text messages a day, the emails. I mean, people are like, we could give you this amount of money, and then you go down that rabbit hole, and the interest rate is ridiculous. And
it's everywhere. So what they did though is that between the locations of predatory lending, and now they don't probably even have to have a storefront. To your point, they can just call you, they can email you, they can put it in the atmosphere, and predatory is just that, right? So they're seeking you out, they're finding you, which really should be the red flag, right? It should be
exactly.
It is not a CDFI or a bank. There are just so many reasons, because those interest rates, you will never get out of the hole. And if you know anything about, being financially solvent, is that hole can go deeper, or you can get from under it so that you can grow.
Well, and Tene, this is what I like to say, because we know in dealing with the real, right? Dealing with the real. Now, it could be that be your option. But what I like to say is, when you don't go into, and this is any money, when you don't go into the money with a strategy, we can talk about access to capital all day. Tene has identified knowing the types, like, is the type of funding you're going after the right fit for you? Then we're talking about, where is it coming from? But let's back up.
Yeah.
Because where we actually need to make sure is in anyone's money that you're asking for and going into, we have to have a strategy to get out of. Right? Absolutely. You need that loan. And that's even great. Any money that you're asking for, any capital injection that you are seeking and that you get for your business, you want to have a strategy in place to effectively use that money. And I even say this, if you have a blazing fire that's going on, because let's keep it real. Some of us, it's after Christmas time. I know I'm dating this episode, but hey, we insert month. That checking account may be on fire at the moment.
It's on fire. Don't nobody call me about nothing, because I'm not doing nothing right now.
Exactly. And so what I want to say
is, have a plan.
Even when you have a blazing fire going on, you got to know the strategy. So I'm sorry today, I had to put that in there, because I think that's where we also miss the mark. Like, we can say that there's limited access to capital, there's predatory lending, there's all of those things. But I also challenge us, especially those of us in the space of advising business owners and doing the technical service of taxes and accounting and bookkeeping, to add that advisory level there and say to your clients, okay, you need the money. What are we going to be doing with it immediately once it's deposited into your account?
Ooh. So, in case folks don't know, the reason why whatever Taliba wants from me, she gets from me, because she too is so passionate about this. And, the services, the knowledge, the experience, and the passion that you bring to that is critical. And what you just said was powerful. And so thank you.
No, thank you. Y'all know that I love this. Y'all know that this is where lives change. We don't want to operate under the assumption that right? Because when you operate under that assumption, and that's one of the things, that's a barrier. That is a barrier for small business owners, and for those that connect the policymakers, the lawmakers, the staff. I served on Capitol Hill as well. But the disconnect, and this is why having Tene on the show today and connecting you with NWBC is crucial. And we've said it, but I'm going to say it a different way so you can hear it again. The disconnect has always been those policymakers and the experts. And then, like, I'm telling you, like, I get all the time from folks in DC, well, why is this not working? Well, why, what? Because, you have to, if it's not working, say it A, say it B, say it D, say it E. Find other ways to share this information with people and don't assume that we know.
That's right.
That's why the Black and Bankable Podcast is here, because you can't assume that business owners know this type of stuff.
The information and the policy and the programs are only as good as, the folks that connect to them. And so you're right. There's a ton of resources I find often that are untapped or unknown because the community doesn't know.
The community doesn't know for whatever reason. So many reasons why.
So many reasons why. We always knew it, but we know that it also became so loud that you couldn't even stand it during the pandemic.
It did.
When the walls came tumbling down and folks ran to get, whether it be PPP or EIDL, those that were not connected, right, who didn't have the information, didn't have the relationships, were left out of that first tranche of funding, right?
Yes.
And what that has to say is that while, again, that has always been an issue and we knew it, it is critically important, right? And it's not equitable, right? If everybody doesn't have access to the same information and the same relationships. So regardless of whether it's a disaster or not, right, they can obtain what they need, the support that they need, especially from the government.
Absolutely. So with that said, you guys just released your annual report, and I want people to know that NWBC is an advisory organization directly to the Biden administration, to Congress, to the SBA administrator. So I'm telling you, like, I'm a nerdy nerd and I love reading, but I want, and you know what, we may have Tene back on. We may do a breakdown of the annual report, whatever we need to do. But right now I want to give a little, like, some of the highlights, some of the major takeaways of the annual report that you want us to lock into and assist with making them louder and stronger.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Again, the council works extremely hard. Sometimes I feel guilty calling them in for meetings and questions and more information and more meetings. And they're like, I got full-time jobs. I mean, these are entrepreneurs that we've tapped. These are CEOs of organizations that we've tapped. But, they've worked extremely hard to share their experience and knowledge and information to these policy recommendations. We have about 29 policy recommendations. And in the report, we have the 29 policy recommendations. We also talk about notable legislation that may connect or be relevant to women business owners. And then we have resources. We also even have a data section that talks about VC funding, as well as just the state of women business owners. And so all of this, we hope that this report is just a resource for women and policymakers alike. But out of that 29 policy recommendations, I am going to really talk about a few. We boil it down from their subcommittees, and I'll talk about three of them from access to capital. And one of our focus areas, we said fund, expand, and tailor federal financial capability resources for women small business owners.
Okay.
And the recommendation, you're going to love this, Taliba, is Congress and or SBA should provide dedicated financial literacy and capability funding to resource partners for the benefit of women small business owners, so that they are better informed and empowered to skill up on maximizing cash flow to support operations. For example, financial businesses capability grants would, at a minimum, focus on cash flow management, creating a business plan, hiring a new employee, succession planning, right? We never talk about succession planning enough.
Yes.
And so, particularly women of color have expressed some concerns or even frustration over, receiving redundant training, but that training typically isn't connected to, to this financial literacy piece. And so decoupling, you can't get a grant or you can't get a loan, but still providing very focused training, we think could be very beneficial.
I think that hits it right on the mark. And I want to insert, of course I'm biased, right? Because I am definitely, one of these resource partners out here that's going to go whether I have funding or not. But I want to stress to folks how important that is, because I do hear this sort of like, the overwhelming of the financial literacy, right? And I know that some people are going to say, look, I've been to 5 accelerators. You know what I'm saying? And
we know,
right?
We know that maybe they kept getting the same 2 pieces of the financial course. And there is so much more to that financial literacy story.
Yes.
And having it tailored for you.
Right.
For women.
Right. And so to that point, it's the same push on recommendation that Tene spoke of earlier when it comes to, if you get a no, repackage, go somewhere else. The same thing with the financial literacy. And I'll even tell you it's a mindset, really. Financial literacy is such a mindset because, I could hear the same sentence today and it land and register with me so much different than what it may be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I say, if you've been in an accelerator before and you still, maybe you felt like you weren't served properly, whatever, find another one. Find another one, because right now it is a great time to be a business owner. Like, and it's certainly a great time to be a woman business owner and a business owner of color, because federal resources, we have a whole annual report dedicated to what we're trying to do, y'all. You know what I mean? A whole annual report dedicated to trying to help the role and the community of being a small business owner. But you know what? Look, we could go on and on. Let's go over another highlight today. Let's give them another highlight.
We could probably go a little deeper in there because let's go back a little bit, because when we talk about that package, right? A lot of times, it's not inherent for the business owner to know how to beef up that package, right? How to make that package better. And here's what they told you: put A, B, and C together. You did that. You put A, B, and C together. But unless you have an advisor or a technical assistance person or a Taliba that connects to you that says, yeah, you put A, B, and C together, but you haven't finished telling the story. You haven't, where is the supporting document for B? Because when you go to those lenders and what they're looking for and what they need, you don't want to keep getting the no. So what are we going to do differently, right? Yeah. And what we also know is that most business owners, that's not what you do.
Exactly.
That's what you do. And we understand that. And so how do we begin to augment that information and that learning? It does connect to a little bit of the next policy recommendation that I would share, and is that we are encouraging the SBA to continue looking at changing the lending criteria. I'll say from my own personal experience, both in DC and in Birmingham, the government will provide various CDFIs with some funding, and the CDFI still can't make riskier loans. Well, that's what I'm giving you the money for. And if we're using the same lending criteria that you used when you didn't have my money, right? Like, then we're not achieving the goal.
Right.
We found, and we know that the statistics say women and Black women produce and are successful. And yet it's not reflected in the loans that they get or the access to capital that they're continually denied, right? And so how do the two make sense? And so we've got to look at the lending criteria because it's systemically
it's well, and then the lending criteria, and can we add to the policy, like, why is it top secret? Why is it top secret? Like, I just need to know, what do I need to, like, I want to go into
crack the code. I do too. So I'm hoping we can just continue. That's the work, right? Like, I want to ask the next question, and then the next question, and then there's some questions we don't know to ask, which is again why we got to have the folks that are on the ground, and even the CDFIs at the table and the banks at the table. Like, come on, tell us what we don't know, so that we ask the right questions. Because then they'll say, well, it's government regulation. Well, then that's where I come in, right?
Exactly.
That is where we need to make a policy recommendation.
Yes.
Because I need to advise the government, like, hey, I know we want to be safe and we want to be thoughtful, especially with government-backed programs. And I'm not asking for us to collapse the economy.
Right. I mean, we do want to have some. Obviously, we need to to have some thresholds here. We're not saying you can get it at a 300 credit. So that's not what we're saying. And because y'all know, I'll tell you to roll your sleeves up in a minute. That's not what we're saying. I think the playing field becomes leveled, or at least more equitable, when we know what they are. And then meaning the lending requirement. And then when we know what they are they actually fair? Yeah.
Bingo. we could end the podcast.
Right. Drop the mic. Let's drop
that is the goal. But also representation. So again, in that roundtable, and what we want to see is also the representation. If everybody on the lending side, and they don't look anything like on the business person side, right? Then sometimes there's not an alignment or misunderstanding or lack of cultural or just basic understanding.
Right.
So more women of color as underwriters, as loan officers, and on the other side, and in VCs. And so part of the report really sort of speaks to those things too.
Are there any other highlights that you want to share with us? Because you know what, I can pick your brain all day on this. I know that what I want to make sure we do is connect our audience to some of the things you're going to be doing next year. I know that you had mentioned some roundtables, and also you had mentioned the obviously we're going to connect. Just so you know, whether you're listening audio or you're on YouTube, we are going to place the link for the annual report underneath however you're receiving this. And then you can always reach out to us or go directly to NWBC's website, which we will provide you also in this episode. But I really want y'all to read that annual report. And I'm challenging myself, like I'm always challenging through these episodes. I'm challenging myself to keep this connect here with NWBC and with that annual report. And, for us to really, let's chime in and let's help NWBC as much as possible and participate in these events. What are some ways that we can be connected with the initiatives that NWBC is doing?
Well, again, thank you for having me today. This has been a joy. I always love talking to you because you really get this and you mean this. You live this.
Yes, indeed.
But in terms of staying connected, and thank you, because again, we need to hear from the people that we want to support, right? Yes. So follow us online, right? I know this will be a part of what's shared, but www.nwbc.gov is how you find us. You'll find this year's annual report as well as all the previous annual reports. We are mandated by, we are required. We're required to do that report, and we're required to share it, right? This is the people's report, just like the White House is the people's house. Right. So check out the annual report, check out some of our data. We do a monthly newsletter. Shout out to our communications specialist, Jordan Chapman, who is really focused on sharing that information. Connect to us on all of our social media channels. Reach out and share your story. If there's anything you need support on, even if we're not a programmatic office, we are not a programmatic office. But if we can connect you in any way, we are happy to do so. And then attend our first in-person public meeting since the pandemic on February 8th. And then you can attend it in person or you can attend it virtually.
Okay.
And so you can go on our website right now and register for that. And we also ask for public comments. So feel free to start sharing information there, and we'll do our best to get back to you.
Okay. And before we close it up, I know I keep saying that, but I do have another question that I want you to share with us. So far, in your position as executive director, what's one of what you feel is like your biggest win when it comes to just Tene, the individual that we know and love? Like, what would you say has been your biggest win as executive director?
Connecting to the baddest women in the land. That's my win, right? Not only the council members that have been appointed by the SBA administrator, but connecting to everybody doing this work day in and day out. Because iron sharpens iron, empower women, That is my biggest win. I think my next biggest win is going to be this next HR 50/50, but I cannot do that without you. And one of the things that I say is that even in the policy recommendations or the next HR 50/50, if we are doing this by ourselves, then it doesn't go anywhere. We go far together.
Right.
And so it's other organizations, it's other people in the community, it is podcasts, it is Talibas, it's all of these folks and all of these organizations that where there is alignment, right? We all push together.
That's right.
For the change that we want to see.
That's right. That's right. So what's the next HR 50/50, y'all? What is the next one? And if you didn't know, I'm curious because, a lot of folks, I think that fact we're kind of ending where we started in HR 50/50. Like, how many of us knew that? That this was a not so long ago thing that had to happen. And how do you feel about that? And what would you say is the new HR 50/50, ladies? And fellows, if you want to chime in, what is the next HR 50/50? And what is the role that we as women business owners will play in connecting and activating that civic duty on top of the other crowns we wear? But it's one that we have to pull out and have to keep at top of mind. And so that is why this episode at the top of 2023 is where I want you to be, where I want that mindset to be, because again, it is an awesome time to be a business owner, a woman business owner, a woman of color business owner. And we are now connecting you to the NWBC at the federal level. We've taken you to business owners, CDFIs, the whole gambit. And I'm telling you, the Black Bankable Podcast, oh my goodness, is going to be doing some major things. And so I want you to lock it in with us. I want you to view this as many times as you need to, but of course, that as you can tell, I am directly connected with NWBC. If you have questions and you need to make sure that, hey, you guys said something and I wanted to share this, you can put it in the comments, or you can, however you see this face, reach out and let me know. And I'm a person of my word when it comes to connecting you to the information. I hope that you see that that's what we have done for you today. We have connected you to a federal advisory organization, a council that directly provides policy recommendations to the Biden administration, Congress, and the SBA administrator on things that you do every day. And that's run your business. That's being a woman business owner. So thank you again for locking in with us. Share it with your network, because this is going to be an amazing ride, an amazing year for you. Thank you again, Tene and the National Women's Business Council, for lending Tene to us today, to the Black Bankable Podcast. And we'll see you guys next episode.
Thank you.